So, picture this. You've got the most powerful, most magical sleigh ever built. I mean, it's faster than light, it's packed with unbelievable potential, and it's getting stronger literally every second. There's just one tiny problem. Nobody built any reins. And that sleigh, well, that's modern AI. Let's get into it. This quote from our source material just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures the crisis we're facing. This isn't about a lack of power. It's about a total lack of control. This is what's called the governance vacuum, and it is, without a doubt, the most critical challenge in AI today. And this isn't some abstract problem for coders, right? This is how you get biased algorithms wrecking people's loan applications, or how misinformation spreads like a wildfire with zero checks. Okay, so here's the flight plan for our little explainer. First, we're going to properly diagnose the problem, that sleigh without reins. Then, we'll break down the three biggest failures of governments. After that, we pivot to a potential solution, a totally new way of building AI and its four key ideas. We'll see how it puts governments on rails, and finally, we'll end with a pretty big question about who's really accountable. All right, section 1, a sleigh without reins. Now, the governance vacuum, it's not just some empty space. The source describes it more like a black hole, where our ability to control AI is being totally outrun by how fast it's developing. It just sucks risk in and pushes accountability right out the door. And here's the absolute heart of the issue. It's a pacing problem. AI tech moves in dog years. It evolves in months, while the policies meant to control it crawl along, taking years to catch up. A perfect, kind of scary example was when Lenovo's customer service chatbot got compromised. It wasn't some super sophisticated hack, just a simple trick that exposed user data. It just goes to show you, the tech is sprinting ahead, and our safeguards are being left in the dust, leaving this huge gap where risk just thrives. So where does this vacuum actually come from? It's not just one thing. Our source breaks it down into three really distinct structural failures. You can think of them like these massive holes in the roof of Santa's workshop, just letting the blizzard pour right in. And here they are. First, having a bunch of high-minded principles that never actually get put into practice. Second, this myth, this fairy tale, that a human can always jump in and save the day. And third, what's called the guardrail gap. And let me be clear, these are not minor bugs. These are deep, foundational cracks in our whole approach to AI safety. This first one is so important because a corporate ethics statement is basically just expensive wallpaper if you can't enforce it with code. There was a German energy provider that automated its systems. It worked great for efficiency, but they forgot to define fairness. They built up what the source calls ethical debt, and well, it eventually blew up in their faces, collapsing all trust. At the same time, you've got major insurers who are just backing away from AI because it's an uninsurable black box. If you can't explain why it did what it did, you can't put a price on the risk. And now for the industry's favorite bedtime story, the human in the loop. The promise is this comforting idea of a watchful human safety net, but the reality? It's a fragile, flimsy workaround that just can't scale. I mean, come on, you can't have a person sitting there reviewing millions of AI decisions every minute. It's literally impossible. And even worse, that person is prone to their own biases, which completely defeats the entire purpose. The last big failure is the guardrail gap. See, we're busy building defenses against the threats we already know about. But what about the ones we haven't even thought of yet? The emoji attack is a brilliant and, frankly, terrifying example of this. Researchers were able to smuggle malicious instructions right past content filters, just by using emojis. It proves that without layers of automated defense, we're basically leaving the front door wide open for brand new kinds of attacks. Okay, so we've laid out the problems, and it's a pretty grim picture. But now, let's pivot. Let's talk about the solution. Because the answer isn't just to build a bigger, faster, more powerful AI model. The argument in our source is that we need a fundamentally better blueprint for how we build these things from the ground up. And this is that blueprint, EXTAI. Now, this isn't some new product feature or a fancy dashboard. It is a governance-first framework. And the name tells you everything you need to know: ethical, explainable, and trusted AI. The absolute key idea here is that control and safety have to be built in from the very beginning, by design. So how does it actually work? Well, EXTAI is built on 4 core principles, which the source calls, and I love this, gifts. And they're fascinating because they're all counterintuitive constraints. You'd think they would limit the system, but instead they actually make it safer and way more trustworthy. The first gift is the gift of forgetting. Right now, AI remembers everything forever, which is incredibly risky. So XAI introduces what's called governed memory decay.
It's like designed amnesia. It means irrelevant or harmful data just fades away, which prevents that long-term drift we talked about, but it does it without erasing accountability. Real trust requires knowing when to let things go.
Next up, we have the gift of disagreement. Most AI today is designed to be a sycophant. It's optimized to agree with you and please you, which is actually really dangerous. This system, though, is built for intellectual honesty. It doesn't just blindly follow instructions, it actually evaluates the quality of the premises behind them. That little bit of friction is absolutely essential for creating real alignment and trust. The third principle is the gift of reflection. Think about it. An always-on system never stops to check itself. It just keeps going, quietly accumulating biases and errors along the way. XDI builds in a formal pause, a moment for the system to stop and review its own actions against its core rules. It's this governed stop-and-think process that prevents that quiet, dangerous drift. And this might just be the most powerful gift of all, the gift of conscience. Saying be ethical is just a slogan, it's not a safeguard. But here, ethics become executable code. Ethical risk isn't just a suggestion, it carries real computational cost. So preventing harm gets embedded right into the system's physics, instead of being tacked on as an afterthought.
Okay, so we get the principles, but how does this actually work in practice? How do we take these big ideas and use them to put our runaway sleigh firmly onto a set of rails? And in the process, solve that massive human bottleneck problem we talked about earlier? I mean, that's the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? How can you possibly introduce all these constraints, forgetting, disagreement, reflection, and not grind the entire operation to a screeching halt? How do you add all this safety without totally killing the speed? Well, the first part of the answer is to completely change how we think about rules. They're not checklists anymore. Instead, they become the literal tracks that the sleigh has to follow. Governance becomes a part of the system's physics. Misbehavior isn't just flagged for review. It becomes computationally too expensive for the system to even attempt. It makes doing the wrong thing not just wrong, but nearly impossible. And here's the clever part that solves the human bottleneck. It's called the hardware air gap. So 99% of the actions, the low-risk stuff, they just zip past at machine speed. But the high-risk actions, the really dangerous ones, they hit what's called a frozen conveyor. They stop cold. The system literally freezes them in place until a verified human being has to deliberately turn a key to release them. It automates oversight for almost everything, saving that precious human attention for the 1% of decisions that truly matter. And finally, the system stops being reactive and becomes proactive. It essentially develops its own immune system. It's constantly monitoring itself for what healthy behavior looks like. It predictively shields itself by blocking bad paths before they're even taken. And it neutralizes malicious instructions before they can ever execute. Governance is no longer about cleaning up messes, it's alive and self-correcting inside the machine. So when you put this all together, what does it really mean? It represents a massive, fundamental shift in how we think. We're moving away from just crossing our fingers and hoping for good AI behavior, and we're starting to actually engineer it through automated, enforceable accountability. And really, this is the transformation in a nutshell. We go from abstract principles on a web page to embedded rails the system simply cannot ignore. We replace the impossible human bottleneck with smart, automated hardware air gaps. And instead of playing whack-a-mole with reactive patches, the system gets its own proactive, built-in immune system. Which leaves us with this final, really provocative question from the source. When we finally automate governance, when we build the reins directly into the sleigh, we also completely redefine accountability. If something still manages to go wrong, who's ultimately responsible? Who's on the naughty list then? And that's the question we all need to start thinking about.